Do you? Okay, so my name is Brianna Wood, and I'm a coordinator with Kern County Network for Children at the Dream Center. I have been with Kern County Network for Children for a little over 8 years, and I've, also been employed by Department of Human Services, the Foster Youth Services coordinating program under Kern County Superintendent of Schools. So I have a plethora of experience delivering youth resources specifically, working with families at risk or experiencing, any kind of child welfare issue, whether it be like a barrier to housing, a barrier to any kind of self-sufficiency, whether there's child welfare involvement or not. Kern County Network for Children itself is a child abuse prevention council for the whole county of Kern. So my agency typically works in like prevention and intervention services. We work very closely with the Department of Human Services. However, our aim is to always keep families together, but that doesn't always happen. So the Dream Center was a formation of tertiary services. So in those instances where we can't keep the family together and the youth comes into care, we want to make sure that we're able to provide them all of the supportive services that they would need in order to be successful and self-sufficient. So I get to oversee the day-to-day operations of the Dream Center, and I also operate a housing and case management program that works with California Veterans Assistance Foundation and the Housing Authority of the County of Kern.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that and giving your background. Um, so our first question, I would like to know, like, if you could describe the community that the Dream Center works with on a day-to-day basis, like, who is it that you likely see? I think you touched a little bit on it, but who are those individuals that you guys generally serve?
Yeah, so our typical age range is 16 up to age 25. So they stop receiving services on their 25th birthday. We don't really have a starting age technically. So we have youth that come in that are as young as like 6, 7, and they just use the computer. We give out snack bags so they get a bag of snacks before they leave. But our typical day in and day out is 16 to 24. Our youth are all along a continuum, so they can be coming in and experiencing severe mental health, struggling with co-occurring disorders. We have our rock stars who are maybe struggling with those things and still trying to maintain employment. And maybe they're just looking for that support to where they can do that and kind of address the things that they're dealing with. We have youth who are still going to high school and maybe coming in and struggling with like housing instability. So it's really long, all that continuum. We have youth who are coming in, maybe not struggling with anything, and they're looking to go to higher education and just need a copy of, their dependency letter from the county that they've been in foster care. The Dream Center itself serves current and former foster youth, so all that qualifies them for the Dream Center is 1 day in out-of-home care as long as it's documented and through the child welfare system. Um, but we also serve as an access point for coordinated entry. So any individual experiencing homelessness can come in, we'll assess them, we'll screen them, we'll see what their barriers are, their difficulties, and we'll put them into the coordinated entry system so they can get housing services started for support.
Okay, awesome. And what would you say, like the demographically, the cultural differences in the people that you encounter on the day to day? Like, is it uh, all ranges of demographics, or what would you say that it is typically here in Bakersfield? Because we do have a wide range of different ethnicities, race, creed, and religious backgrounds, and everything like that.
Mm. So we are not religious based. Youth do come in and they're in those pivotal times of their life where they're exploring religion. We don't really go too hard and heavy into those conversations. So we don't document religious affiliation. It's not something that we kind of hone in on or make big concepts of. However, with that being said, if a youth does come to me and they ask me a question about some type of religious or religion, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to give them the best answer that I have that's non-biased and allow them the opportunity and the independence to explore those things on their own. So demographics, though, so in regard to like race and ethnicity, majority of our youth, because we work with current and former foster youth, don't really know what race and ethnicity is, or
Mhm.
how they would determine those things for themselves.
Okay.
So sometimes if they come in through care with the county, they're able to help them establish those kinds of backgrounds. For example, the county is required to notify a youth if they're indigenous or if they have any kind of like ICWA eligibility. So maybe they can connect them with like their tribe or their native ancestors. So sometimes a
Mhm.
youth will know specifically if they do have some kind of native or indigenous history. But outside of that, most of our youth identify as having two or more ethnicities, or having two or more races because maybe they're like, hey, I know I'm, Hispanic, but I also think that I might be like Black or African American. And we try our best to explain to them what the difference is between race and ethnicity.
Hmm.
So I hope that's beneficial. I would say more of our population in regard to our demographics that we have to track for our grants and services are youth marked two or more race or two or more ethnicity.
Okay. And so you guys will walk through those processes with, and that's awesome because uh, I mean I can understand that it's sometimes from a mixed or blended family, it's kind of hard to say like, hey, I'm this or this. You might have heard something but don't know officially. And so
Hmm.
that's awesome that you guys will walk through and also kind of explain the difference between race and ethnicity because there is
Hmm.
a big ambiguousness to it, ambiguity
Yeah. I
to
mean, a
it.
lot of times they don't really know where that background, they don't have even a footing of where that background is or where they should start to have those conversations. So it's hard for them to
Mhm.
identify.
I see. Thank you. Um, so what is regarding your population that you guys work with, what is often a misunderstood or something that somebody from the outside would kind of miss on this population? Because I know that from the outside, we could see somebody who is struggling with housing instability or unaccompanied, being an unaccompanied minor. You might have some preconceived notions on what's really going on. But
Mhm.
so, what would be some misunderstandings that somebody from the outside would have based on this population?
I think the biggest thing that I hear, even, 12, 13, 14, all the way up to age 24, are that these youth are just defiant, that they have
Mm.
behavioral issues, that, someone just needs to give them this, 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 and they'll be fine. I think a lot of people overlook the fact that they to build safety or foundation. And anger is a secondary emotion. So a lot of times when someone erupts and they're mad and they're frustrated, usually it's because they're sad or they're scared or because they don't understand something that's happening to them or something that's going on, because our youth have been put in these situations where they haven't had the opportunity to build safety and security. They're on guard. So what you might look as defiance, they're looking at self-protection, right? I'm protecting myself from harm that this individual might do to me, and I'm protecting myself from the harm that maybe something could happen. Working with foster youth specifically, we have to understand that they've experienced compound and complex traumas, right? And that's just off the bat.
Mhm.
If they've identified as a foster youth, we know that something has happened to them in a space where they were supposed to have safety and security that caused them to be removed from their family. So there's that initial incident of, whatever child welfare determined, whether it be like neglect or physical abuse or sexual abuse. Now I'm removed from my family and what that safety was, or what that stability, right? Because that's not even healthy stability, what that stability was. And now
Mhm.
I'm put in with this other family, which is a whole nother trauma, right? So I've experienced my initial trauma that caused me to be removed. Now I'm being removed. So that's already two very complex and compound traumas that we're talking about. And we know that foster care is not a perfect system. So placement changes. I'm not able to talk to my friends anymore. I'm moving from schools. Um, so I think whenever we're working with youth or just thinking about youth specifically, instead of looking at them as like they're defiant or they're angry, or they just need that, or they just need this, maybe coming at it from a trauma-informed perspective that maybe they're responding or thinking or doing certain things because of the things that they've been through, and we should change our approach and our perspective and how we're trying to engage them.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that. they are complex emotions that we try to give XYZ labels to, and we end up typically stigmatizing,
Hmm.
which in the long run does a worse job of perpetuating behavior that whatever we disagree with or other, right? And I think that that's a really important thing. Thank you for sharing that. Moving on to like existing programs and resources that your affiliation works with and like serves this population. Could you identify which programs you guys and like resources specifically that you guys target this population with? Like say, like you said, housing authority and other programs that you kind of couple together to help out each student or each individual. Could you kind of just explore what those are?
Yeah. So the Dream Center is very unique in its structure. We're a collaborative-based resource center. So what that means is there's multiple agencies that share costs and sit on site. Again, I like to say that any need the youth may have, they can get that need met here. So all the way up, starting from basic needs, so they can come in, they can access clothing, food, showers. We serve a hot meal once a week. We do cooking classes, really trying to focus on like independent living skills and life skills. I say a lot of like little corny sayings, my staff says, but one of the things I say is that common sense isn't common. So we can't plan an event for youth on how to ride a bike without first checking in with them we can't plan an event for youth on a bike ride without first checking in with them if they know how to ride a bike.
Mhm.
We can't expect them to keep their apartments clean if we haven't showed them what clean is and how to clean. So really
Mhm.
focusing on life skills. All the way up to the higher needs so they can come in. We connect them to mental health services, substance abuse treatment, inpatient treatment, sober living environments, higher education. They can explore financial aid assistance. We work with Employers Training Resource, DOR, Kern Regional Center, Mexican American Opportunity Foundation. So pretty much anyone that offers a youth resource in Kern County either stations here at the Dream Center or alternates and spends a little bit of time to connect with the youth and do that warm engagement. Um, but we help them with the full continuum of support. So whether it's something that they can't directly access here, my job specifically is to make sure that it's something that they can obtain in the near future.
Okay, great, great. So what are the standout initiatives that you believe? Because I think like the financial planning, like going to college, trades, um, financial literacy, stuff like that. Are there any initiatives that you feel are like the standout stars of your program?
I would say anything employment focused. There's a few different programs and grants and initiatives at like assembly bills being worked on in past that have to do with focusing youth around employment and employment engagement. Career technical vocational training programs are always great because it's not a one size shoe fits all kind of thing. We want to make sure that we're gearing services and letting the youth have the autonomy to pick what their field or their interest is and what success looks like to them.
Mhm.
So it's very individualized. It's different for every youth. So anything employment focused, and then also mental health. So there are transitionally aged youth dyad teams that have been implemented within our Kern County the last few years, and that's been really game changing. A dyad team is a specialty team that provides youth a case manager, a therapist, and then a substance abuse counselor if they should need one. And the three of those people wrap supports around the youth, make services tailored to them, and really help them, get through some of these traumas that they've experienced so that they can become more self-sufficient.
That's awesome. Would you say that there is like a high rate of substance abuse that is coupled with some of those trauma, mental health issues that you guys are navigating with these populations?
I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I do know that youth specifically are more likely, transitional age youth 18 to 24 are more likely to have co-occurring disorders. So that could look like initially they're struggling with bipolar disorder, and because of that, now they're also struggling with like a substance abuse disorder. So they're typically
Mhm.
co-occurring. If a youth does have one, they typically have the other. I wouldn't say that. Fentanyl in Kern County is an epidemic regardless of what we're talking about. So, do I see a lot more youth struggling with substance abuse and that being a high need? Yes. But I also think that it comes with the fact that our youth are more vulnerable and they're being targeted.
Mhm.
I also like to talk in our community that youth don't typically pay for drugs. So, if you're giving them money, it's not like they're going to use that $20 to pay for, some meth. Typically, they're trying to use the money to get some food or a hotel room. But
Mhm.
if you're at the shelter and there's an older individual who's, experienced homelessness or has been using for, a lengthy amount of time, and they're like, hey, I can keep you safe here. Or, I bought you this phone so you can use it because they don't have a phone. They got kicked out when they were 18. Person took their phone, they didn't have anywhere to go. Maybe they exited care, and now that this is the only opportunity they have, they're going to seek that safety, even if it's not really safe or even if it's not
Mhm.
like a healthy environment. So a lot of times they're targeted because of their age and their lack of experience and lack of time being homeless.
Yes, I could see how there's a big vulnerability in those situations. Well, thank you for sharing that. And this is the last question in this area. Who do you feel, since you guys are a collaborative organization, who do you feel has really made, besides yourselves, like an impactful work within the community, or has made like huge strides towards addressing some of these needs?
That's a loaded question, sir.
Hmm.
So I we work with 13 different collaborative agencies just here at the Dream Center itself. There is no way that I could tell you that one is making strides
Hmm.
over the other.
Hmm.
We all deliver individual services in different fields. And I think that every agency that collaborates with the Dream Center, and I do genuinely feel this way, they're here because they want to remove barriers to service, and they're here because they want things to be a little bit better for every youth that comes in. I think that they're making strides and advocating for policy change, even down to the little things of just how we complete for different service providers or how we questionnaires or how we garner feedback or make sure that things are actually youth-led and youth-driven. I would say that really there's not one in our county that does more than the other. I think that our county, it really, if you go anywhere, and I was very surprised whenever I started my career, really, if you go anywhere, our county is praised for our collaboration. It's very unique that you see, a resource like the Dream Center, or even unique that if they're not stationed at the Dream Center, that, the director from Department of Human Services can call the director from the Housing Authority of the County of Kern and have a conversation of like, hey, how can we figure out a way to like help our families who are involved in child welfare and for them to find funds and develop a program and set that up. That's very unique
Hmm.
anywhere you go, state, county, anywhere you go. So I think that we're very ahead of the game in that aspect.
Awesome. Yeah, I would, from what I've experienced, I think there's like a certain sense of camaraderie that is not so much a, how would you say it? Like a competition between
Hmm.
organizations, more so than a competition against I guess, the evils and the things that are going on in our community. And I see like a collaborative push that is targeting the areas that needed change. And so I was just curious to see if like you would share the same kind of uh, I guess, enthusiasm for the other programs, and it doesn't surprise me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and so talking about the initiatives that do exist, are there any areas like gaps within resources or programs do you feel uh, that could make an impactful change? Because I know that that's a hard question too, because it's
Hmm.
like when you said organizing a bike riding event, but if you don't have the understanding that they don't know how to ride a bike or someone isn't experienced in riding a bike, like you have to provide that service to teach them. So it's
Hmm.
like sometimes these areas are overlooked or
Hmm.
they kind of go unseen under the radar, so to speak. And so it's hard to kind of say. But in your heart of hearts, is there any gaps that you personally feel that could be raised up? And maybe a little bit more effort or energy.
Mm, I would say that the community has the effort and energy, and it's something that we've talked about for a long time. But, funding and just garnering stable funding is always the hardest thing, I think, for any service provider or any county or city department. Um, but I would like to see more housing resources for youth in general who don't have foster care or dependency. I would like to see more employment-focused programs. We do have great ones here already, but I think that if given the opportunity to be awarded more funding, they could do even more of the great work that they're doing. You know, with youth, research shows in other states that when they're provided, intensive services, more wraparound services, and opportunities for higher education and employment, they're able to self-stabilize in shorter amounts of time. So for youth,
Mhm.
typically they don't need like longer, forever Section 8. Housing assistance because they are younger and they're able to garner some of these skills for self-sufficiency. So, you know, um, our community is moving towards these things, and I think that there's great people doing this great work already. But if, given the opportunity for more funding, I think that we could definitely expand these services in a way that's needed. Just because there are so many transitional aged youth and younger youth and their families experiencing housing instability, it almost feels like there's, never enough to combat the other. Um,
Mhm.
but prevention services are also really important. I think there's a scarce amount of prevention services to keep families together and to keep, children in the home, whether it look like, family counseling, family mediation, really focusing on the schools, providing them more support. There's school social workers now, but depending upon the district that you're in, there could be, 600 youth that are identified as needing that school social worker, and there's just a lack of funding there in the schools, and that's really where, if we can get kids to feel safe at school and to be consistent at school and to address some of their home things that are going on, they're going to be more successful. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that was a long answer, but
No,
yeah.
that's good. I definitely would agree. Yeah, with the prevention, I feel like there's some stuff, but it's more like retroactive. Like you're trying to solve the problem after the fact, and it really doesn't go into like the early stages or things that probably could be prevented a little bit better. But thank you for sharing that. And that kind of goes into like the population or groups of youth that may be underserved here in Bakersfield or Kern County, specifically like if they're students that live in the rural outer outskirts of Bakersfield, the Arvins, Lamont, even Shafter, Buttonwillow, like those areas, um, undocumented uh, or who have undocumented immigration statuses, foster youth, like those are just a couple examples. Um, but just specifically like underserved or left out populations that maybe need some kind of breakthrough to reach them.
Yeah. So, you brought up rural areas. That's always a big need for Kern County. We have a vast amount of area to cover, and just resources to be able to cover it is very scarce and very hard to come by. Recently, HUD, the Urban Development, Housing of Urban Development, HUD. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm blanking on how to say it, but HUD
Mhm.
awarded our community a youth homelessness demonstration program grant. It was about 5.1 million, and that is a grant that's led by the Bakersfield Regional Homeless Collaborative to help address some of these gaps in services for youth. And the youth themselves, based on some assessment, and then also like our homeless management information system, identified that rural was a big gap, serving our youth who are in these rural areas. And they also experience very different challenges. So, like the youth in Tehachapi who are sleeping outside in front of their school, they're having to struggle with extreme weather conditions where we don't get
Mhm.
snow here, but in Tehachapi it
Yeah.
snows. So, what does that look like? So we got some funding. The Bakersfield Regional Homeless Collaborative was awarded some funding, and they were able to provide award amounts for four different programs. And one of them is going to be a rural transitional housing, rapid rehousing program that also provides some kind of outreach and services to youth in those areas. So that's going to be really exciting. Um, I would also say something, it's kind of a hard topic to talk about right now with the current administration in different areas, but also our LGBTQIA plus youth. They're at greater risk and vulnerability, and there definitely needs to be more support wrapped around that community and those youth. They struggle again with very specific barriers, very specific complex traumas, and there's just a lack of resources really in the community to be able to support those youth. And because of the current administration, I don't really know how that would look even within the next, year or so, but that's
Hmm.
definitely a gap and a need, something that we need to address within our community, and really work towards that. Again, all of these gaps have been identified, and that's why it's so important to work with youth and really make sure that the work is youth-led and youth-driven because we're garnering their feedback. I'm a co-adult advisor for our Youth Action Board. So, Youth Action Board is a committee, a standing committee under the Bakersfield Homeless Collaborative. That has up to 10 youth on it who have lived experience of homelessness. So they developed a youth assessment, distributed it to the community, garnered feedback, they provide their feedback, and we really make sure that we're checking in with them at like in increments of time, really figuring out what are the gaps and what are the needs and what are the current services that we need to bring to the community,
Hmm.
to look at those things. So that's what I would say. I would say our youth in rural areas. I'm excited about the new programs that are starting, but I always think that I think there's a big gap right now, and I think that there could always be more support for our youth who are like 14 to 18 or 14 to 17. There's not that many resources in Kern County for those youth experiencing housing instability, whether they're accompanied or unaccompanied. But those would be the biggest areas of need. Yeah.
Okay. So I liked how you said that like you have it's a board of youth that you're having continuous dialogue with, right? To find out the needs, the wants, and some really maybe some important areas to work on. So that's one area that you find a connection with that age group. But what could be some disconnects between those age groups and what they find maybe with people from the outside looking in or wanting to help from the outside, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
that does make sense. I like to steer away from talking for them, so I'll give you
Uh-huh.
my opinion on what I think that I see. Um,
Hmm.
I think a lot of times, again, older adult individuals go into these things or these situations with the youth, and they're like, "Oh, if you just got a job," or "Oh, if you just, I put you in this apartment, it's gonna help you, and you should be able to figure it out because you're young and you're able-bodied and all these things." Um, Youth have more complex trauma, and that's just a fact of what it is. So instead of trying to force onto a youth what you think success looks like for them, really checking in with them and making sure that you're setting goals and establishing boundaries that are healthy and what they know what they want. And that's the thing.
Hmm.
Older adult individuals are more likely to just tell them what they think they should want instead of
Hmm.
asking them, what is it that you want? So there's a lot of disconnect in that sometimes. just making sure that whatever goals you're establishing for, and you're following them through those processes too. So, like, let's say that I have a youth who comes in and she wants to be a singer. I'm not going to tell her that she's never going to be a singer. With this day and age, we have youth who are, you have young adults who are making hundreds of dollars on TikTok every month, and that's how they're like self-sustaining. So,
Hmm.
who am I to tell them that I'm not a music professional, I'm not an artist, but I do know that in order to be a singer, you have to have certain equipment and you have to have capital in order to buy that equipment. And how are we working on a plan to gain capital in some kind of stability so you can reach that goal if that's what you really want? I'm not discouraging them from the goal that they want to set.
Hmm.
I'm putting that as an overarching of what it is that we're going to do together. And then
Hmm.
making sure that I'm having realistic conversations with them about that. So we also call that meeting them where they're at. I'm not pushing them to set a different goal. I'm not, if I have a youth who comes in and they're struggling with substance abuse or something, I'm asking them every day, like, hey, do you want to access a sober living environment? I'm not, and they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then the next day they might come in and I ask them the same question and they'd be like, no. So I'm not going to push them to tell them that this is where they should be at or where they're ready for, but I'm also reminding them that, I'm here and I care and we're going to be here when you are ready.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. You're giving them the opportunity to make a informed decision is what I'm taking, and you're giving them the option of choice. And I think that
Hmm.
from an older person's perspective, it's like, well, this is what worked for me. This is what should work for you. And
Hmm.
it's like I think you had brought it up earlier, and I was saying that it's like preconceived notions that we think what we know is better than what the younger generation, and they have the world at their fingertips, so to speak, with
Hmm.
uh, technology, the platforms, and everything's evolving so fastly. And as I get older, I'm realizing that I'm less in touch with the younger generation. I thought I keep feeling like I'm young, but I'm realizing like there are things that even that I'm doing that I need to change, and so I see the need for uh, the older generation to have a more open perspective and welcoming demeanor to youth because if we want to
Hmm.
help them, we can't be so judgmental and so one-sided, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. Like you said, the world that we grew up in is so vastly different from the world that they're experiencing today. Even talking about like career and vocational training programs, what was in demand 5 years ago is not what's in demand today. So what might have worked for
Hmm.
you to get yourself stabilized is not what's going to work for them. And it might not even be something that they don't even care about. They're like, I don't want that
Hmm.
at all. And that has to be okay too. The amount of people we see online now, living out of their van and traveling and doing all this stuff, that's the world they're growing up in. That's what they're
Hmm.
exposed to day in and day out. And it's more feasible to do those things now. Whereas, so I would have told my mom when I was younger, like, oh, I'm going to grow up and live in a van. She'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
That doesn't make any sense. So just recognizing the current climate and current, state of where they're at, just checking in with them and making sure you're meeting them where they're at.
That's good. Um, and kind of going back to because from like a current high school district or like educational aspect, um, like each area of Bakersfield kind of has like a different demographic, has a different need, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and so like what neighborhoods or like what areas of Bakersfield do you think are still under resourced? I know we kind of talked about it in the rural areas, but are there any urban areas within the city, like downtown, from east to west and north to south?
So we attend an outreach committee with the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative. We work very closely with the school districts. I would say the east side of Bakersfield is still a little underserved. When we talk a lot underserved, the amount of families that are experiencing poverty or instability, is just very high in those areas. Um, outnumbering by many, by hundreds of what we're seeing compared to some of the other areas. And also we've been talking a lot about like community mentality. I think the east side of Bakersfield has been kind of, its own section for so long that even whenever we're talking about like our outreach teams and like, hey, are we getting calls for service over in the east side of Bakersfield? People don't call because it's so integrated into their daily lives and routines, and they've almost kind of normalized it or built these protections around, my uncle who comes and hangs out, but then also sleeps at the park. That's just normal. That's just my uncle. Like that is what it is, instead of
Mhm.
letting people in and asking for those helps and supports and services. So I would say the east side of Bakersfield. Obviously, people identify the O8 area code, so the oil dot area, as always struggling. I don't know if so much that's, our youth population that we're looking at or like the older adult population. But I would say that it's, definitely an area for need. There are more targeted resources for the oil dot area, though. The tiny homes went up in the oil dot
Mhm.
area. There's specific
Mhm.
outreach teams assigned to that area. A lot of community partners, religious-based, church-based groups go out and do targeted outreach in the Oilda area. So I think that there's still a really high need in both of these, but I think that the resources, they could use more resources too. So it's hard to determine, but
Yeah, yeah,
I would say that the east side of Bakersfield um, it could benefit definitely for some additional assistance.
yeah. I would agree. And I think infrastructure wise, like there's a lot of need in the east side that you would see in other areas of Bakersfield. No hesitation of building up the city programs, shopping centers, stuff like that. Access to healthy foods or access to different things that should be like a necessity in a
Hmm.
community. I feel like it's a little neglected, and there's a rich history of culture there and of the population that I feel is a huge need.
Hmm.
Um, and we kind of already talked about the job skills training because it does look different nowadays. Like back then when I was younger, it was like trade skills like carpentry, electrical work. And those are things that came to my head when I was thinking of like what gaps in job skills. Um, but are you guys in collaboration also with like C-Tech, ROC, where they have like nursing, they have fire tech, or even like because what came to my mind too is like being like a esthetician, like nail tech, lash tech, like stuff like that. Those are pretty lucrative trades to get into. So are there
Hmm.
any trade schools or any beauty schools or anything like that that you guys do collaborate with?
Trade schools, yes. So we partner very closely with Employer Training Resource and Epic to try to get our youth into those programs and then placed into trade schools or vocational training because there is funding in our community to help youth mitigate those costs. Those programs can be very expensive if you don't utilize
Absolutely.
like
Mhm.
financial aid and things like that. So we try to connect them through that avenue. In regard to like ROC and T-Tech programs, that's more like I wouldn't be able to answer that question at
Mhm.
all. I know that those are programs that are utilized very well in our community. I know that one of the youth homelessness demonstration project grants are their intention is to be working with high school aged youth who are experiencing housing instability who have been identified as homeless. Um, and I think their program is called Pathways, and their intention is to work with those youth and place them into one of these like ROC or C-Tech programs. There's another one it's either through KCSOS or Kern High. I can't remember what their program is, but putting them in those programs to make sure that they have some kind of like trade work or good starting
Mhm.
on a foundation of like a career opportunity for them.
Yeah.
But those
Okay.
are amazing programs. Just
Yeah.
not the population I work with specifically.
Yeah. No, I get it. I was just curious. And then through your organization, do you guys work with like budgeting, credit, type of like I said, like the financial literacy part of as you age out, you have to start thinking of finances, like how to, uh, maybe not balancing your budget or balancing a checkbook, because I mean, who writes checks anyways nowadays? But
I think most
um,
banks like discontinued checks, or like most places don't take checks anymore anyways that used to take
uh-huh.
checks.
But you get what I'm saying, like in terms
Hmm.
of like, because as a young person, I mean, at some point, I think being financially free is something that you would want to strive for. Um, and I think from when I was in school, those types of things weren't really given, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if there's any type of, yeah, like financial literacy
So we
things.
We do host workshops here at the Dream Center for financial literacy. If they're in a housing program with my agency, they're required to do a budget at least once a month, and we're talking to them about like savings, credit, helping them mitigate any kind of credit issues that they have. Unfortunately, a lot of our youth who are in foster care have credit issues from whenever they were children. So maybe an older adult individual used their name and their social security card to like open a PG&E account or something. So a lot of times it's like
Mm,
working with them to dispute things that have been on their credit to at least get them on like a level playing field and then working with them and explaining like what credit is. We
mhm,
have the financial institutions here in town, so Valley Strong, Bank of America, Gold, Golden One, I think that's what it is. The credit union, another credit union.
mhm,
They've come and done workshops here at the Dream Center. So talking to the youth about credit, healthy credit, but also like what is a savings account? What is a checking account? They offer certain incentives whenever they come. So like if you open a savings account, we'll put this much money in it for you. Really making sure that we it's something we talk to them a lot about. Um, Also, if they're in our housing program, we require that they complete a money management course that's offered here at the Dream Center because, like you said, it's very important that they have a good understanding of financial literacy, but also helping them to understand that these goals that you want to set for yourself are not that far off from what you think they are. So we'll
mhm,
budget with them like, hey, if you had a part-time job, and this is how much money you made every month, and these are all your bills, even if you're only working 20 hours a week, like look at how much money you could be saving. Like look at the
mhm,
things that you could be doing. You want to get a car. I think the thing is they haven't been awarded the support that they need for someone to talk to them about these things that it feels so far off or so unattainable. Um, that you really need someone there to just be that encouragement and that support and saying like, hey, it's not it is hard, but all things that are hard take time and all things that take time are worth it. So just
mhm.
really talking to them about like, hey, this is something that you can do and setting those financial goals with them.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so as we kind of conclude this interview, from your perspective and your standpoint, for somebody that is coming in, like in terms of like my walk, what would be some encouragements or things that you wish someone had told you coming into the type of work that you do? Because specifically, my focus, the reason for doing this project is because this is the type of population that I would love to work with in the future. My heart it goes out to the youth that come from this background, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. And so, like, what would be some maybe a bit of advice or encouragement that you could share with somebody coming behind you, so to speak, in this type of field of work?
So maybe two tokens of advice. One, work on not taking it personally. And I mean that like, their success or their failures. We need to make sure that we're treating them as individuals and adults, and, their success is their success solely. We're here to support them, but
Mhm.
whenever they meet that accomplishment and that goal, that's their goal that they've done. They've put their feet to the ground, they've walked through all these things, they've done through all these things, and we were there helping them along the way, but that's their success, and we're celebrating their success with them, not as our own success. And in that
Mhm.
same realm, their failures are their failures. So, we slip up sometimes with our own children. We're teaching them how to walk. They fall a whole bunch of times. We grab their hand and we help them get back up.
Mhm.
So we're there. We're as long as we're being consistent, we have done everything that we can in order to help that person be successful. And when they're, whether they fall or they get up, that's their success and that's their failure. So don't take it personally. If they're not able to meet an accomplishment, it's not our accomplishment to meet in the first place. We were consistent, we showed up. So whenever that failure happens, it's not our failure, it's their failure, and we're here to help them get back up. Um,
Okay.
and then the other is, I guess, just make sure you're being consistent. So there's no bigger reward than, showing up for a youth every day, and it might take time too. So hang in there. Hang in there because, I have youth that I worked with, 6 years ago who I was there and I was consistent and I showed up every day, and consistency is the biggest thing, and they just, couldn't figure it out and it wasn't the right time for them. And, it is what it is sometimes. Sometimes it's not the right time. We have to meet them where they're at. We're not forcing them to do something that they're not ready for because ultimately, like, we want them to be successful. They come back, 6 years later and they're like, oh, Brianna, I remember that one thing you said to me, 5 years ago. And I think about it now and I think about it so differently. And I think about it now in some of these situations. And that's like the biggest reward. So, whenever you're having those hard days and you're just like, oh, this is a lot and it's dragging on and on and on, just remind yourself that like you might not see the change that you're affecting right away. But as long as you're consistent again and you're showing up, the youth are going to come, they're children, like our own children, right? Like
Mhm.
you didn't automatically turn 13 and you're like, oh, mom, thank you for like all the meals you made her. If you didn't, if your mom was still unstable, providing what she could with the capacity that she had, we didn't automatically turn around and say, "Oh, I understand why it was this way." No, it took time. We're older adult individuals. It took, I didn't understand some of those things until I was like 28. And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." So making sure that you give it like that time and patience and just realizing like it takes time. Hang
Yeah.
in there.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so that I'm gonna finish the recording and then I think we have a few more minutes until we're done with this. But thank you for sharing your time, your experiences. Um, you put a lot of things into perspective and helped me to understand different things that really I can work on as an individual, and it helps me to see the population of youth in Kern County that do have issues such as homelessness, unaccompanied, being an unaccompanied minor, foster care. Like there's a need for better understanding and just the consistency to continue to work with them. And so, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for meeting with me.